Warning, this video is intended for adult collectors. It contains plastic collectibles, questionable opinions, and the foremost Kamen Rider Decade apologist. Do not panic. This is just a random review.
Before we begin, thank you very much to a familiar name. Oh my god! They killed Waspinator! You Blintron! For joining the Patreon campaign. That's getting to be as common a running gag in this on this channel as Kenny actually dying on South Park. But nice to see you back. Thank you very much for the support. Thank you very much for the contribution. Thank you for letting me say something silly. So today, let us take a look at an odd, weird favorite of mine, oddly enough. I have an odd history with G1 Quake as a toy. And by odd history, I mean I stole one as a kid. It was at a kid's house that I didn't know. My dad just stuck me there for the day. He had Transformers. I snuck one out before we left. I'm not proud of it. I don't have it anymore because I felt guilty about it. But we're going to make do, because now I'm going to buy every Quake that ever comes out to make up for this sin. And I'm going to show you the one that just came out for Legacy United. So this one is supposedly a heavy retool of Skullgrin, but you will note there's very, very little left of the original figure or the original transformation scheme. This is a very different tank than the hover tank that the original one was, or hover half-track tank. Skullgrin was a weird toy. Skullgrin was weird. Let's be honest there. And appropriately enough, the tank that he was retooled into is also a very odd tank. We do see that the turret point is set very far forward on the machine. It's very high up, as the tank seems to be mostly made of blocks above the treads. There's a lot of gappage where you can see a lot of exposed robot parts. It's messy. Let's just be completely honest here. This is a very messy tank. There really isn't any getting around that. There isn't any making excuses. It's just a very sloppy looking tank. But then again, Quake is a very minor character in the Transformers fiction, so he's not going to get a brand new mold of his own. So yeah, unfortunately, this is probably going to be the best he's got. I mean, it is cast in his familiar maroon plastic with a bunch of gray and the blue on top that you can see as well. So all of his traditional colors are represented. A lot of it is done with paint. You can see the treads are sculpted in gray. So these parts along the top that form the bulk of the tank, that's all paint. And then the molded stuff is up here in the central area, the blocks that lock all this thing together. It is kind of a sloppy job. You can see where angles are a little bit odd in how this is arranged. I try to squeeze everything down, see if I can get everything to click together. It don't click. It's just like that. I mean, it's a shame. It's a shame. Deluxe tanks are getting kind of rare because they usually end up being larger scale, like Voyager or something these days. But it's so to get one that's this oddball is weird. It's not the worst looking tank toy I've ever seen in Transformers. We still have Titanium Megatron as our litmus test of how bad something can be. But it is one of the lesser tanks. It's just sloppy looking and very odd. You also cannot turn the turret. Now, weirdly enough, because of the way everything in here is sculpted and the parts, the turret will raise on its own when you attempt to turn it. I suppose in that regard, yes, you can turn it all the way around, but the parts are going to clash, so it can't point forward. It always has to point upward, as if you're shooting at an aerial bot. Also, this is just a 5mm piece. You never have to remove it during transformation. You can just leave it as such, but yeah, that does make it a little bit more disappointing that it's just kind of stuck on there. So, yeah, as you can see, it's a silly looking tank. But if we want to make it even sillier looking, we can turn to his Targetmaster partners. So this is the cool thing, is that even though this is a retool of a previous figure, he does include both of his Targetmasters from G1. We know this adds part count to the toys, so it is difficult for Hasbro to work them in. Glad when they do. We have Tip Top, the purple one, and Heater, the blue one. For those who are paying attention, Tip Top is entirely painted purple because there's no purple sprue anywhere on this toy. And Heater is supposed to be primarily black, but for some reason they've inverted him and blue is his plastic color. But it still looks relatively similar. They even have the same guns sculpted into the sides of their arms, or I guess shields in the case of Tip Top. So transforming them is pretty simple. They flip over like so. Just like the original G1 Targetmaster figures, they really just flip out the barrels, and that's supposed to be the guns. Which means we can now just attach them onto Quake however we want, because there are 2 ports on the top, which we can do, and he looks absolutely stupid with those. But there are also 5mm ports on the side if you want to mix it up and kind of give a little bit better spread to all of his cannon barrels. It's plenty of room to upgrade. I mean, if you've still got like Siege Astrotrain and all his extra guns lying around, load this guy up. I'm sure it would look hilarious. But at least he has options, and we'll get back to them because they do a little bit more than that, but better for robot mode, which means it's time to transform the guy. We are going to start by folding up the turret and locking the barrel into place with a tab right there. And then, let's see, what do we do next here? I'm going to start breaking things apart because he does have a lot of, like, snap connections, like so. And we're gonna fold all this up to get it out of the way. Now, the interesting thing here is that the toy itself, even though it does share some parts with Skullgrin, everything else is a completely new transformation and feels very, very different from any of the previous usages of this mold. For instance, the way the treads work to get everything kind of unfolded and into the robot mode leg configuration is actually pretty involved, and even transforming it a few times, I get thrown off a bit here and there about how everything is supposed to go together. Even right now, I'm kind of like, okay, brain, remember which parts go where. So you'll excuse me if I fumble just a little bit here. So what you got to do once this double hinge is in this position, this piece goes up with the tread rotated this direction. This tab is going to poke into the top of it, like so, and that's going to shore up your leg. Look at how nice like that all comes together too. That's actually pretty clean. I actually quite enjoy that. All right, so same on this side. We're gonna get that piece out of the way first. Then we're going to flip that leg out. We're going to double hinge. Get that leg in that position. Fold the leg down to rotate that piece all the way to the other side. And then this folds up like so. And there we go. Tight little leg transformation. Very cool. Very interesting. Up top, let's fold these arms out. There's a slide joint, which is very rare these days. And then when you rotate all this down to form the back of the torso, that should push the chest forward to reveal the head. Close that back up. Rotate the arms around and then flip the hands out from the back of the forearms. Bingo. And then one more. All right. And there we go. That's Quake's transformation. That's him in his robot mode. Yeah, he's very different from Skullgrin. The transformation engineering is considerably different. He does work very, very well. I mean, I'm quite thrilled with how he turned out. I'm going to turn the lights down just a little bit so you can see a little bit more richness in the color. But yeah, like, what came from, like, a kind of messy tank mode turns into a fairly clean robot. Like, he comes together really, really nicely. Yes, he is technically a retool, but this is one of those, like, Ship of Theseus retools where it's like how many parts are left of the original before you just say it's a brand new toy. The only parts retained are the chest, the forearms, and the feet. Everything else is completely new. So while it does share a little bit of familiar transformation engineering if you're familiar with Skullgrin, it still does a tremendous amount of new stuff on its own, and it's a lot of fun. Like, this is honestly a very fun, clever transformer to transform. I quite enjoy how they managed to make this guy work. As always, we take a close look at the head first. It does have that familiar G1 style gold face and a more traditional style of head to him. Looking very, very good. He's got one of those purple Decepticon symbols that's very hard to show on his chest, but trust me, despite the camera, it is there. He doesn't look too bad at all, considering, he shares parts with an old toy. And everything else, pretty smooth. As we said, really like how the legs combine together. I will bring up, as long as we have him in close, there is an inaccuracy if you are going for something that is accurate to his previous depictions, and that is the color of the arms. Quake's arms are supposed to be more solid gray. Here, obviously, they are red at the shoulders, black around the forearms. What's weird about this is that there's a lot of paint on the forearms. They're sculpted in black, but there is quite a bit of red paint on there, presumably to make the vehicle mode look a little bit more solid. But we kind of acknowledge that the vehicle mode is already kind of a wash. So I'm not sure why Hasbro didn't just go ahead and paint the forearms gray, so at least you had some, take on his original coloring there. It's a weird inaccuracy in a line that is supposed to be, striving for accurate depictions. And considering Quake is such a low-tier character, I don't really foresee him getting a better attempt for a long, long time. Like, I think this is just going to be our Quake figure for the foreseeable future. That does make the inaccuracy just a little bit weird to me. But, I guess whatever. Between all the new parts and the 2 Targetmaster partners, this toy is doing a lot, so maybe it's a budgetary thing. I don't know. Hate budgetary discussions. So yeah, as you can see, he is very well sculpted. He's got a lot of nice little details all around him. I will warn, because people are a little bit uptight about it sometimes, but that is your opinion. You're perfectly valid if this kind of thing bothers you. The forearms do feel very hollow because that's where the fists go, and there's no cover for them to make them a little bit more solid. As you are manipulating the arms, you're going to feel those hollow gaps. It might bug you. Doesn't bother me so much, but, for everyone it's different, so I got to point it out. But since most of the details are pretty much apparent and we've already seen most of them in the tank mode, we can go ahead into the articulation rundown, which means the head has no real ball joint to it. It's on a ball joint, but it can barely go up and down. So I'd count that as just 360 degrees of rotation. Shoulder joint is universal, all full range there. That works pretty well. Bicep rotation, 360 degrees. Elbows, a little bit beyond the 90. Not too bad. Nothing at the wrists since they're hinged as part of the transformation. We do have a waist joint. Not too bad. Universal hips. Like to see that. Thigh rotation, 360 degrees. Again, just a little bit beyond 90 on the knee. And then ankle tilt. Nothing forward and back this time. Just standard tilt. So he does have the standard range of articulation, just maybe a little bit lower, but, for the most part, he does pretty much what most Transformers do these days as far as the articulation department goes. Now, let us just bring back his Targetmaster partners really, really quick, starting with Tip Top. We'll go ahead and mount in the right hand. We'll put Heater in the left. And he does look pretty cool wielding both of his Targetmaster partners. It's a very cool looking figure with both weapons going, but you'll notice there are 5mm ports on the top of both figures. So just like the original G1, you can combine the two into one ridiculous looking weapon. It does get very heavy, but mine, despite being a retool at some point, does have enough strength in its joints to hold it up, which is always nice to see. And then if you want a little bit more added accessory loadout, not only do you have the 5mm ports on top of both Heater and Tip Top, you have a 5mm port at the shoulder, the one on the side that's left over from the tank mode, the two on the back for the turret, which remember is on a 5mm peg. So if you want a centralized port or a 5mm peg to attach things to, you have that as a potential as well. Oddly enough, there's also 5mm ports in the back of his forearms. So I guess if you have some extra weaponry that can cover up those gaps or something, I guess you can do that too. But that's pretty much everything you need to know about Quake. There's an inaccuracy in the robot mode that does bother me with the color on the arms, and the tank mode does look pretty dumb and broken up. But I'm going to admit I like the toy a lot better than I assumed I would. And it mostly comes down to just how clever and interesting the transformation of the toy is. Even after a few times through, it's still a little bit, like throws me a little bit because it is a very clever rearrangement of parts to come up with two solid legs. And everything else after that just kind of feels good. Like if you're transforming him to tank mode, you get to that step where you're just kind of like folding him into the tank, and that's like, there's really good feel there. Like it's really satisfying to do. So yeah, I like him better than I thought I would. Admittedly, he has his flaws, and that's going to bother some people. For me, I think the good outweighs the bad. But I will acknowledge, yeah, he's a little bit problematic. So there you go. There is my take on Quake. And if you want to leave yours in the comments below, I would appreciate that, because more opinions are always a good thing. So more people know if this is the kind of toy they would go out of their way for or not. So with that, thank you everyone for watching. I will see you next time.